Ladies and gentlemen, an evening with LeighAnn Snuggs.
I am going to do something I don't typically do when I'm speaking, and that's pull out my notepad, because if you have questions or comments or answers to something I don't know, I'm going to write it down. I can try to find out for you. Fort Thicketty is a little different for us. We call it the Liberation Day. I call it an engagement. It really wasn't a skirmish, and it wasn't a battle. So Patrick Moore surrendered with the threat and being surrounded by 600 of Isaac Shelby's men. So we call it Liberation Day, because the British surrendered. We didn't have to engage in any kind of cannon or firings at all. So there's lots and lots of history to Fort Thicketty that tie into what I do. I will say first that Fort Thicketty is owned by our History Society. It's Cherokee Historical Cherokee Historical and Preservation Society. I get it all right. We call it CHAPS. So if I say CHAPS to you, that's who I'm talking about. And they are a wonderful group of people that have worked really, really hard to acquire the property with plans to hopefully get some of the surrounding properties just for preservation. The block house has been reconstructed. It is there. We one day hope to have the walls up around the fort again, but right now it's a trail, a well house, and a fort, and that's coming a long way in just a few years because they've worked really, really hard at it. Fort Thicketty is close to me and my heart because my 5th great uncle lived, my 6 great grandparents and their children all lived very close to Fort Thicketty, and my 5th great uncle's war pension papers talks about meeting Daniel Morgan at Grindle Shoals and scouting ahead and meeting back with him at Fort Thicketty before they marched into Cowpens. And so I know he was there. So there's just something about walking in there knowing he was there. I'm probably the luckiest person in Gaffney. I have the funnest job. My office, the Visitor Center and Art Gallery, is in a 100-year-old post office building. So an old federal building. So I have the funnest job in Gaffney, and I work in the most beautiful building in Gaffney. So if you come to downtown Gaffney, look for the pretty building, and there I am. I work with Cowpens, Kings Mountain, the Over Mountain Victory National Historic Trail folks, all the national parks people all the time, but spend a lot of my time with people like Randy, and these are the Over Mountain men. So Randy's from Tennessee, and they're coming down this weekend for a meeting. And we spend a great deal of our time telling the stories. And we have a lot of the stories along that trail. We don't have a lot of the stories collected and confirmed with Fort Thicketty. I don't know, how long am I talking? You didn't tell me how long I'm talking. Just talk? Just talk, okay. So, I do have, my 5th great uncle. I have his war pension papers. I know he's at Fort Thicketty. I can kind of put that there. The exact layout of the fort, what buildings were where, we don't know that yet, and as the Historical Society continues to work in raising the funds and getting archaeologists out and working on that property, we'll continue to do that. To me, probably one of the more interesting stories is that we know that Patrick Moore set up in the fort with his 94 men and went out and about raiding homes nearby. And on Highway 18 between Gaffney and Union, there's Whig Hill. John Knuckles hated the king, was a huge Whig, lived on a hill, and it got called Whig Hill. So the Knuckles plantation was his home place. He was tricked by the British and murdered. Now, they did let his son go that was with him. And his son, of course, got back to his parents, and then she rode on horseback to go get his remains to bring him home and bury him there on Wig Hill, and that cemetery is there. However, we also have stories of the raids of the British to John Knuckles' properties. So his widow lost livestock and buildings were torched and furniture busted. There's a story that I cannot confirm, but as we get into celebrating the Liberation Day and all the activities that went on at the fort and the livings of those days, there's a story of an African-American domestic slave of Mrs. Knuckles that after a few raids of the British coming from Fort Thicketty, Patrick Moore's guys coming to raid the plantation, that her African-American slave took an axe in hand and acted like a crazy black lady that was going to kill them all, and they left. And so the Knuckles, our African-American Knuckles and the John Knuckles family for many years, up until not too many years ago, had family reunions together. And I say not too many years ago, some of you in here are young, so I'm saying probably within the last 30 to 40 years, they were still having family reunions together. Another interesting tidbit of something that I just recently found out in trying to research and find some of this stuff is that widow Agatha Knuckles married my Uncle Henry, which was the one that was injured at Cowpens that was at Fort Thicketty, married his brother. So technically Agatha maybe became my 5th great aunt by marriage. So lots of close ties. We have a hard time researching everything, and I know that we talked a little bit in a meeting last night about the Andersons of South Carolina, a very popular name. Fort Thicketty has been known by several things, and Fort Anderson is one of them. Y'all may know more about some of the fort things than we know, and if you do, share that with me. We'll try to help confirm. If you have, we're super excited that South Carolina SR is wanting to take this on as an annual event. It's something that Billy Pennington, the curator at the museum, and I have talked about wanting to do. I get to plan the city's events, and even though this is in the county, Billy and the museum folks are by far at the top of my list for partners and who I like to work with, and we really get a lot of great things done. We have a hard time confirming some of these stories because we get back to Fort Anderson, and Andersons just go crazy in South Carolina. So with that's about all I know on Fort Thicketty. As far as the fort itself, we are writing a new Peaches book. I was thrilled to see that some of my publications are hanging in your hallway, and you have our Peaches books, or book of Peaches on the Trail back here. Peaches is our city mascot. Imagine Gaffney and Peaches. Who would ever put those two together? But Peaches is a cat that is a tour guide. And what we did is we actually took history books and disguised them as coloring books because the young and old like to color, right? And so it was a great way to educate our children. We now have 5 books. The next one that comes out should be Peaches at Fort Thicketty. So the things that we're trying to confirm, we know built in the 1760-ish time, and everything is almost an ish because we're not completely sure, but around 1760s, to have that hiding place, that safe place from the Native Americans. And then, of course, it was sometimes occupied by British and sometimes occupied by Patriots, so lots of history there. And so Peaches will talk a little bit about some of that history and the colonial living in the next book. But Peaches on the Trail goes by Fort Thicketty. And so we've put it in our schools, go to elementary schools right by the fort, and they've really owned the fact that they live close to a fort that has such history in the American history, U.S. history studies. And so we hope that through these reading programs, we'll educate them even more of the things that are going on. And we always love to send our real mascot, a big head and a big costume, Peaches to go congratulate the children once they've gone through the books and read them in their summer reading programs or at the library or in their school systems. But any questions about what I do or Fort Thicketty or how we all tie to Revolutionary War? My office is, you know, a little closer to Cowpens than it is Kings Mountain, but the number one reason for tourism for Gaffney is Revolutionary War and genealogy research. So that put me in it, and I've been in it now for years.
Yeah, who was the Patriot leader?
Patriot leader was Isaac Shelby. Isaac Shelby, and Patrick Moore, of course, was the British commander that had taken the fort.
It was taken without a shot being fired.
The surrender, the British surrendered without a shot being fired. So Isaac Shelby surrounded the fort, sent word to him to surrender. Was it by sunrise? We heard the story last night.
Yeah, Patrick Moore said that under no circumstances would he surrender. He was going to fight to the last man.
That's right.
And then the next morning at sunrise, Shelby showed up with 600 men surrounding the fort, and Captain Patrick Moore reconsidered.
Right. So Patrick Moore had. There's different numbers. As you do your research on Fort Thicketty, you'll see that there are different numbers there. Some say 43, some say, not 43, 93, some say 94, some say 98, but 93, 94, whether or not that counts Patrick Moore. Isaac Shelby, we believe to have mustered near Cherokee Ford on the Broad River, and he came with 600 men. So, you know, for Patrick Moore to go, you know, yeah, right, I'm not surrendering, but then to take, you know, his little wake-up call of looking out and seeing the fort completely surrounded by 600 men, he changed his mind.
It's my understanding that the Patriot Force made such a racket that the British commander thought he was being outnumbered.
I've heard several stories, and then it goes back into trying to confirm. You know, and it's hard to confirm something from 238 years ago next month. I've heard that they took a tree that was shot down and aimed it like it was a cannon, told him he was surrounded and they were going to blow him to smithereens, but they didn't have a cannon. So that's a fun story to tell. I've heard that just the number of men outweighed Moore's men. So, I'll never forget Patrick Moore's name though, because I work interns. It's always great because they get to learn. They're from Limestone College, and so they're from all over the country when they come in, and they get to learn American history. For us, it's local history, but for them, it's American history. And so she wrote some information for me for a brochure, and she said that Patrick Ferguson was in the fort, and I was, so where was Patrick Ferguson? She says, yeah, so he was in Fort Thicketty, and then he got killed at Kings Mountain. I was like, no, but you got both Patricks right. And so we have to, it's a great learning experience. So Patrick Moore was at Fort Thicketty. 3 months later, Patrick Ferguson on top of Kings Mountain. So.
Now, I heard that for the British commander was recommended. Was he cashiered? Whatever happened to him?
We answered that question last night too. So he was reprimanded, was my understanding, but he went on and fought in another battle.
Well, I've studied up on Patrick Moore.
Good.
Haven't done it yet, but was inspired last night on a story.
So last night, we have a judge in town, an attorney in town, that's also a judge for us, that is very, very passionate about Fort Thicketty. He grew up near that area, grew up playing in that area, and he spoke last night at our space meeting about Fort Thicketty. And he gave information that I hadn't. Of course, he was kind of saying the same thing I knew I was going to say tonight. There's so much that we have not been able to confirm. So right now we're collecting the stories. And that's, all we can do is start collecting the stories and then just start peeling it away like an onion. It worked perfect. My devotion this morning was about you get more passion when you start telling stories, and that's what we've done. And we've done that at the Visitor Center in Gaffney too. And you probably have an opportunity to do something very similar here, but collect the stories as people come in. If they were at Canebrake, if they had ancestors there, go ahead and get that story. We've put panels in a Revolutionary War exhibit hall that we have. That one wall now is a complete ancestry wall, and we have their descendants come in and hang their panel. So they get us their war pension papers or some kind of documentation that we can confirm, and we'll write a panel about them, and it's a foam core panel, very simple. We hang it with Velcro. It's very lightweight, but the families come in and we make a big deal of them hanging their ancestors' story on our wall. So, and that gives them ownership. And so that'll help drive traffic too. Collect those stories, put them in a book, put them anywhere. We just recently, we've really been pushing in October when the Over Mountain Men come down for the anniversary reenactment of the march and then the battle at Kings Mountain. We pull in fourth graders. We partner with the National Park Service and the National Park Foundation to get the students out onto the trail. And so we had a group of fourth graders that came last October, and when they went back, and I give the teachers full credit, they went back to their classrooms, the teachers gave them a character of Revolutionary War era. They had to research their character. They had to pick out a favorite story. They had to get their own clothing. They had to get their own props, and they did a wax museum. So the librarian got with them in their iPads. They recorded an introduction of who their character was, and we were invited to go see their wax museum. So you walked in and you pressed the button, and it introduced them while they stood there frozen. And then they went into character, and then when it was over, they froze again. And fourth graders. And they're wanting to do local people. So I may need to call you, Mr. Grant, because like Patrick Moore is one of the ones we wanted them to bring in some of the British side, because here we go, all patriot over here. But Kate Berry Moore was one of them, and that little girl now is just dying to meet Sheila Ingle, the author from Spartanburg that wrote Courageous Kate. And so it's a lasting impression. Some of those students are going to be coming to Calkins the night before Kings Mountain. We do a drama. The Over Mountain Trail Association does a drama the night before Kings Mountain. And so they're going to come and do some of the storytelling for us. They'll come do first person storytelling as fifth graders, smart teachers. We presented them with an award this year. They had the third graders sitting there watching the fourth graders get an award because they can work for it next year. So it's beaming over there. I hope it continues.
I'd like to point out some similarities with Fort Thicketty and what was happening here in this specific area. Fort Thicketty was originally erected as a blockhouse to guard the settlers against Native American depredations. And there were blockhouses all along the Lawrence County line with the Indian territories. This was Cherokee territory up until 1783. But the settlers had blockhouses located all along the county line for defense. And this was the origination of Fort Thicketty. It was loophole for rifle defense. Now, the building was a 1.5-story log structure. There's no way it would accommodate 93 men. It wasn't that big. There would have to have been encampments around, and it was surrounded by a body. But I suppose if they all crowded in, all 93 men could have gotten in there at once. But when the fort was surrendered, they recovered like 250 muskets. So those 93 men would have been repeatedly firing muskets. They had a lot more
Artillery,
firepower
right.
than just what the 93, men with 93 muskets would provide. But it was a similar situation to what was happening just 10 or 12 miles from here. Greenville County, Lawrence County line is the difference between the Lawrence County line was the westernmost expansion of European settlement until 1783.
Really? And it's so cool because all of our areas, I was excited to come here because I'm just a different chapter of the same story. I mean, it's the same storybook. For us, where the blockhouse was, Fort Thicketty for us was probably as close as Native Americans were really getting because they were on this side of the Pacolet River, and the Catawbas, or I think the Cherokee and Creek maybe were on this side. Catawbas were on the other side of the Broad River, and where Gaffney, present-day Gaffney is, we were a mutual hunting grounds. We have an area right by Limestone College called Indian Hill, and that is allegedly where the Native Americans went up and they could see the buffalo roam. Make you want to sing? But they would hunt buffalo there. And so just a lot of fun history there.
Have any artifacts been found?
Joe Johnson spoke a little bit about that last night, and so the land has been farmed for many years, and there's a lot of, I guess, metal trash in the ground. So they've had some metal detectors out there, some specialists out there. They thought that maybe they had found something that was a piece of a musket that turned out to be a piece of a stapler. So, you get excited and then bam, there goes the air. But they're really trying to raise funds. They're still, raising monies, looking for avenues to really finish the fort, determining, I think I wrote down, his long term. They want more land. They've got to do more research, walking trails. We've got a walking trail now that goes from the parking site down to up by the well house and then down to the blockhouse. Grants, donations, we continue to look for reconstruction of the fort itself. So, and we struggle a little bit with grants and funding that's out there because, like the campaign of 1776, if it was a battle or a skirmish where there was a really good story behind it, then there's funds out there to try to preserve that land. So. And then they were like, we don't know what to call it. And I said last night in the meeting, I call it an engagement. It was still an engagement, but it was not a battle. It was not a skirmish. It was an engagement. Any other questions or?
Were the occupants of the fort actually British or were they loyalists?
I understand that there was one British officer, Patrick Moore, and the rest were loyalists, but now I don't know that for sure, but it's my understanding that most of them. Do you know?
There were very few British regulars.
Yeah. I have heard only just maybe two.
Ferguson was the only actual British officer.
Right. So, and I would like to know if there were any over mountain men at the fort, at Fort Thicketty, because it was just 3 months before Kings Mountain. Patrick Ferguson is sending word across the mountain that these guys need to come join, his forces, or that he's going to lay waste to their land. And they said, "Oh no, you won't. And we're not going to wait for you to get here." And so, but some of those guys, obviously were down here at that point in time. The word gets back across the mountain, they come back. So I've heard that some of the mountain men were here, and then I've heard that they weren't here. A lot of war pension papers, and a lot of just talking about it. I mean, it's the stories. It's trying to engage, and I hope that I can find something to confirm the domestic slave story, because I just think that's the coolest thing in the world. So, and her family, actually, Agatha and my 5th grade Uncle Joshua taught their field hands and slaves to read and write, and they started one of the African American churches in Cherokee County that's still there today. So,
LeighAnn, in lieu of that, the Over Mountain men, will they play a role in July 28th, the Liberation Day?
well, we hope so. You know, they have a new president now, and she keeps sending out these emails when we've got this one on here, and this one on here, and this one on here. Because the great thing about the Over Mountain Victory Trail is that it's 330 miles long. So we have people all up and down the trail. We will have a conflict with the guys up in Tennessee. The state outdoor drama is Liberty at Sycamore Shoals in July. It's the last 3 weekends of July every year. And so we will not have the Tennessee guys. We will lose some Spartanburg guys because they go up to help those guys. You know, our guys come down and help them at the reenactment for the Cowpens, and Spartanburg Regiment goes up and helps them with the Liberty play. So we'll put the word out, and we'll beg for a color guard, and you know, tell us what you need, and we'll ask for it.
I ask because we have 2 or 3 members in our society that are also members of the Over Mountain Trail. So if you predict or expect that you're going to report a few there, that would be great news.
Right, and some of our members are SR members in other states.
Yes, right.
And so absolutely getting them here to have that present. So you tell me what you want. I'm telling you, that president lady's crazy. She'll send out an email in a minute that says here, and all you've got to do is click and say that you're in, and then she sends you reminders every few days. So tell me what you need, and we'll put it out there.
I know talking to Dan Woodruff from the State Society of Essay, he's also a member of our SR.
Okay.
That he will be there on July 28th. We expect him to be the initiator of the color guard
Okay.
too. So I think most of you know that.
Okay. And we've got several South Carolina guys that have come onto the Over Mountain board. So that's exciting. Mark Anthony out of Greenville. Robert Hall may be able to assist us some from Spartanburg, and then Brad Knight there in Gaffney. So we'll try to pull together some representation, and I'll be there. I'm not one of those guys, but I'll be there. Okay, did you have a question also?
We said, on the last topics, talk about one of the previous topics, you said it wasn't a skirmish,
It wasn't a battle.
it was a battle.
It wasn't a battle, it wasn't a skirmish, so I call it an engagement,
So why do you say that?
because they never got into any kind of skirmish or battle. It was just a surrender of being surrounded, and then Isaac Shelby saying, "You're surrounded, you know, surrender." And Patrick Moore said no, and then he said, "Okay." So, just an engagement, because they never fought, and there was no skirmish or battle.
Gotcha.
Which I think is pretty cool. That might be the only surrender without a single shot being fired in the whole Revolutionary War. Who knows?
Right.
Ticonderoga, Ethan Allen.
Pardon me?
Ticonderoga, Ethan Allen went up to the fort, knocked on the door, and said, "I'm taking command."
Oh, so,
And that was it.
and where was that? New York? Okay, so maybe on two. We'll share. We're not picky. It didn't happen often, I would bet.
Oh, yeah. Mike mentioned how Thicketty got the name.
You know, I absolutely refuse to tell you how Fort Thicketty got its name. Just come see.
Yeah.
The brush out there is so thick, you will understand. So, yeah, just be there on July the 28th at 10 a.m. At 10 a.m. So that's going to be our first official event there. So we're really, really excited to have the SR take that and run with it. Is that it? Any other questions?
One more thing.
Okay.
You mentioned Union. You mentioned the directions. Union is nearby.
So Union is down Highway 18 from Gaffney. So I guess Union and Packlet. I don't know. We came the back way, so I'll tell you. Do not get on I-85 to go to see Fort Thicketty. Take this road and then that road, and then until you end up on 150, and you come in on the backside of Cherokee County through Packlet. But it was a beautiful drive, and just coming through there and seeing all the ridge lines, you know, you can just imagine what was going on here 238 years ago. So.
But the reason I asked Union is where one of the societies of Children of the American Revolution
Oh, wonderful.
is oriented. And matter of fact, the president, Christine Burnett, has retired as president of the State Society. David Smith, that's his society.
Okay.
He's from Union.
Wonderful.
And Martha Kurtz, I think her sister. But would it be nice to have Children of the American Revolution here?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And you have your coloring books?
Even without the coloring books. My 7-year-old granddaughter loves to put on her period clothing and go to a reenactment. We were supposed to be in Tennessee a couple of weeks ago, but it didn't work out. So I have promised her we would go be part of the Liberty play in July. So, but that's the best way for the students to learn, for the children to learn, is to actually get them engaged in what you're doing. Let them act it out. Let them sit there and play tug of war, stand on old stumps, and making dolls out of corn stalks. And so she probably knows more about the Revolutionary War right now than some of the students that graduate high schools.